Greetings, I'm back. Okay, still not really good at the intro. I do like the sliding in and popping in, kind of like animation in a PowerPoint slide, but still not sure what to say as an introduction, or hello or whatever that doesn't sound like someone else that is on YouTube. I'm working on it. Anyway, today what we are picking up with is making the stuffy for Elena, so making the dragon for her. And one of the things that I think I forgot to mention in the previous video was why she chose a blue dragon. So I asked her, why a blue dragon? And she sent me a link that had a list of characteristics of blue dragons, and it's all really super positive stuff. And I actually was going to write down some of those characteristics and realize now that I didn't, so I don't have those to share as I had planned. Google blue dragon. It'll tell you all about it. Really good stuff. Positive, honest, victorious over challenges. I think I may be remembering some of them now. But just those. Okay, well, moving on. So I have the fabric and I have the eyes. I tried to find something to 3D print and there really wasn't anything out there that really was gonna work. So I broke down and I ordered some safety eyes from Amazon, and those arrived today. And I think that's all I needed before jumping into actually the assembly. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm going to cut out the fabric and get to sewing. Okay, starting with the body, I'm going to try to lay things out according to the way they have it on the pattern instructions. Unfortunately, because the pieces are so small and they've crowded things on here, I can't tell exactly which ones are which, but I will just put all the ones I know I need two of on where I folded the fabric over. And crinkle and smooth. Okay, next we have, or first I should say, the body panel. And it looks like that. It's laid like that. And now it's too far away for me to see. So, picking back up. And I just, oh, here they are. So we've got the body, then we have the head, top, and then the head bottom, inner leg, outer leg for the front, and we have the inner leg and outer leg for the back. The tail spike, because what dragon doesn't have a tail spike? Front and back of the tail spike. And then the horn, but the horn we actually need 4 of. The rest of these I only need 2 of. So what I should have done was trace this twice. That way I could just put 2 of them on here instead of having to cut it and then unpin it and move it. But as I'm looking at this, it occurs to me that perhaps I need to see which one of these should be in the contrast fabric. And horn is in the contrast fabric, so it goes over here for now. The belly piece, it's going to be out of the gold contrast. And then 14 and 15. tail spike and tail, wait, no. Yeah, so the tail spike and the bottom of the tail are also in the contrast. And then 14 and 15, I don't remember cutting 14 and 15. So what are 14 and 15? Oh, so 14 and 15 are actually the spikes. So the way it's represented here on the pattern is just like a rectangle and not actually all the little bitty scale pieces or those spike pieces for the back. And so, yeah, so that's why that is. So now I should have all the stuff that I need for the body separated from the contrast pieces. And then I need to figure out where I put the little scale pieces. And then the next thing we will do, or I will do, is to pin this down. And I'm a little torn on which type of pin to use because this is knit. So there is a case to be made that I should use the ballpoint. But because it has this, it feels kind of like a laminate, may not be the right word, but because it's got this texture on the top, I'm afraid that the ballpoint pens won't pierce through the layer of the shiny on it. So I will probably end up using the regular sharp pens. Okay, next up, pinning. I'm trying to remember to look at where the grain line is on the pattern pieces. And so as I'm looking at this, although the body piece is laid out like it looked in the pattern instructions, it's actually going counter to the grain line. I'm not sure how important that is, but there's really not an efficient way to cut the fabric out if I try to switch it to where the grain line is proper. It's a stuffy. There's plenty more left if I really goof this up and I need to make it again. So we're just going to go with efficiency and conservation of fabric over the strict grain instructions. If I were making a garment, if I were making a dress, especially if I were making it for someone else, I would definitely pay attention to the grain line and make sure that I was following that instruction. But since this is going to be a stuffed animal, and I have plenty of fabric to consider this a test run, if it doesn't go as I would like, then I'm just gonna go ahead and risk it. And just, you know, as I see a lot of, or the phrase I hear a lot from other YouTube folks who sew and do crafts, but don't necessarily follow instructions, I'm gonna wing it. Which is actually kind of funny because I'm making a dragon, which does have wings, or the pattern has wings, but I'm not using them. That's another example of me winging it because I am actually not following the full instructions for it because I am only doing part. I'm only doing part of I'm changing up the pattern to fit what I want rather than what it says. Okay, this is going to be slow because I can tell it's going to take a while to pin through because the fabric has a little bit of unanticipated structural integrity that's making it difficult to pin, along with the fact that I use tracing paper and the tracing paper is a little thicker to pin through than the normal tissue paper pattern. So I'm going to stop here, and I don't know if you heard that or not, but that was my laundry buzzing. So maybe I'll go take care of the laundry, then I'll come back and pin this. And in the meantime, you don't have to see those things. Time will pass. Not much time has passed because as I was trying to pin through the paper and the fabric and their teeny tiny pieces, I figured out it would probably be easier for me to trace the pattern pieces and then pin just through the fabric to cut around the pieces, because I was afraid I was going to tear a gaping hole in the fabric, or I was going to tear the pattern pieces if I kept going the way that I had been going. So, yeah, I know. I used so again as a vocalized pause. But that's okay. We all have our pet words. And so happens to be mine. Anyway, okay, gonna go back, draw these, then cut, then do the gold, and hopefully, not too long from now, I will actually be starting to put the stuff, or put the pieces through the machine. So I went to trace around the pattern pieces, and I realized although I had traced the pattern and cut the pattern pieces out, I had not notched the pieces. Notching. So basically cutting the little thing out there so it's easier to remember or easier to line up the pieces to make sure that you've got them lined up properly. And yeah, so went back and notched them and then realized I also had some that were going to need little holes punched in them. So notched them all and then realized, I think I had showed you the notching gadget before, but I had not shown you the punch. So I thought I'll stop and show them. But because I have ADHD, I stopped to tell you this without first getting the stuff out so that I would have it to show you, because I had the idea first and thought, oh, I need to tell them about this. And now I am looking for the punch. Found it. Okay. So, I ordered this off Amazon because Amazon has everything and I don't like going to the stores. Like many YouTubers you may have seen who do crafting sort of stuff and sewing sorts of stuff, I don't like to leave my house. Well, I don't mind leaving my house. I just hate going into large stores where there are lots of people and lots of visual noise. Okay, so this is the little punch thing that I found, and it comes with several dies for different size circles that you can cut out. And tip, before you use this on your cutting mat, know that it will cut holes in your cutting mat. It is that sharp. So my husband has a 3D printer, and so had 3D printed some flats for me to use as bottoms in tote bags to keep them open. And so I just appropriated this one, and you can see all those little circles there. And that's because I figured out the hard way that if you just use this to punch through paper and you have a cutting mat underneath it, it will actually damage your cutting mat. So it is vicious. It is a vicious piece of machinery. Simple machinery, but vicious. So anyway, you use this, punch through, and it will take the circles out so that you can mark through the pattern. Yeah. Okay, back to it. Another note when using the punch to open up the holes in your pattern is that sometimes you have to use a pin to clear the little paper holes or paper circles out. So unfortunately, it's not like a regular like hand hole punch where it just like ejects the stuff. You actually have to go back in and clean it out. Also, do not be surprised if when you go to punch through that the pattern tries to move. So what I try to do to make sure that it doesn't tear anything is I don't necessarily try to punch all the way through. Sometimes I just want to get it started and it may cut like, I don't know, 3/4 of the circle or maybe even a little bit more than that, but it's kind of still attached, and then just fold up the flap and it's going to be out of your way and you will still be able to use it, and it's less likely to tear holes in your fabric, or not your fabric, your pattern pieces. And I find that this is particularly an issue when you're using the tissue fabric or the tissue patterns straight from the manufacturer pack, and it's less likely to be a problem as far as tearing if you do use the tracing paper. Okay. Time has passed, probably not a lot, but I figured out once I punched the holes after I had notched the pattern that there were a couple of places in the patterns that required some additional cutting because it's a 3D object, or it will be. You have to have holes in the or spaces to attach the legs to the bodies, and so the body and the back legs have a little thing, this strange shape that you have to cut out of the fabric, and so of course you want to be able to do that in a proper place, so you need to cut that out of the legs. So I was getting so very frustrated at not being able to just go ahead and cut the fabric, but it's probably good because as I was looking at these and cutting out the holes, there was where did it go? There was one that said you only need one of this. So instead of cut 2, it was cut 1. Now I am baffled by which one it was. Maybe I just imagined that. Maybe I wrote cut 1, but should have put cut 2, because I'm looking at all of these and there are 2 back legs. You know what? Never mind. Now I'm going to go back to tracing. Eventually, I will get the fabric cut. This may or may not make it into the video. I know I don't edit, but would it be really an editing thing if I just didn't put one in, right? No, we're good. Okay, I have finally got the pieces for the body traced out, and so I traced them all out first, and then I went back and pinned it so that when I go to cut it, hopefully it won't shift the bottom layer and the top layer. I do think that I may try to use a rotary cutter so that I can leave things flat, and maybe that will reduce the chances that things will slip as to when I'm going to, if I used actual scissors, which might lift things up a bit and allow things to slide. So hopefully I have a fairly sharp rotary cutter or blade in my rotary cutter. I have 3 different sizes. I have the big size, and then I have a medium and a small size. So I will probably cut out this first with a big one, shift all the extra fabric away and then go back in with the smaller rotary cutter. Well, I tried the giant, or not giant, but the large size rotary cutter to cut away, just cut this piece away from the rest of the fabric, and it did a not good job. So I thought, well, perhaps the problem is the blade. It's not sharp enough. Maybe that's the problem. And I also knew that I would need a smaller blade to maneuver in between these pieces. So I opened a new rotary cutter, the small Fiskars one, and tried to use it to cut out. And you can see here that it didn't work so well either. So I don't think it is necessarily an issue with the sharpness of the blade. I think it's the fabric. It's like allowing the top layer to cut, but it's like just bunching up the bottom layer, which is what I was hoping I could avoid. So looks like I'm going to be going back to my trusty gingers to complete cutting this out. Time has passed, and I don't remember where I left off recording, but I do know where I have recently left off cutting. I have the bodies cut out and the legs and the little scales and the contrast fabric, but one of the things that I figured out I needed to do was to mark the attachment points for a few things. And when I was outlining or tracing the pattern on the fabric so that I didn't have to actually pin the pattern to the fabric to cut it, I used a marking pen, and there are generally two types of marking pens if you are unfamiliar. One is washable, and the other one is, or wash away, and the other one is heat invisible. So with the heat invisible one, you just put it against the iron, or put the iron against it, or even just near it, and it will disappear as a result of the heat. Then we have the wash away pens, and the wash away pens, they stay when you're ironing because sometimes you want to keep those marks even after you've ironed a seam open or down or whatever. But since this is going to be a stuffed animal that I don't anticipate being laundered, I should have marked everything with the heat erasable pen, because then I could just kind of put the iron near the spots where the markings still showed and it would disappear. But since I did it with the washing pen, or the washable erasable pen, I'm not sure how many of those are going to still show up. But good news is that the body of it is actually blue, and so hopefully I don't have too many of the blue showing through, because I switched over to the heat erasable pen. That's it for now, folks. Something else that I figured out when I was cutting the fabric for the dragon is that there is a lot of similarity between the lame and the fabric as a result of the shiny metallic fabric, or the shiny to metallic layer on top of the knit fabric that I'm now using for the body, or for the whole thing. And so as I was cutting the blue out, I could feel my Ginger scissors, it just was an unpleasant feeling. Like I could feel with every cut that it was dulling the blades. And so because I have emotional attachment to the Gingers, as well as just really like them, I switched over to a different set of scissors. These are some Fiskars that are supposed to be, they're called razor edge. Anyway, but the idea is because of the extreme angle that it doesn't lift the fabric up as much, so that you can get a better, more accurate cut. And then also it has a spring, so the idea is it's supposed to be less stressful for you because you don't have to push open the the scissor handles in order to rebound after you've cut. But what I have found is it's actually kind of a hand exercise to do the cutting. So for me, most of the time it's less stressful or less effort to actually pull apart after I've cut with the regular scissors rather than try to battle the spring in this one to actually do the cut. Okay, again, I think the next thing that I'll be doing, probably not today though, because I still have to go into work here shortly, is to, I think I can start assembling now because I think I have all the pieces cut out. So I was going to sit down and start to actually sew the pieces together for the dragon, but I realized a couple of things. One was that the fabric had a very floppy feel to it, which was reminding me of the red super stretchy knit fabric that my sewing machine ate on the last project, and I decided I don't want that to happen again. And since the pieces on the dragon are relatively small, I thought there was a high likelihood that this might happen. So I bought some tissue paper, and I'm going to use that to kind of stabilize as I'm sewing. And since it is tissue paper, it should rip off fairly easily. I did not want to do a fusible stabilizer because I did not want to have to iron the fabric because I was afraid it might affect the shininess or the adhesion of the texturing and the print on the top of the fabric. And I also didn't want to try to use spray starch on it for basically the same reason. I didn't want to have to wash those tiny pieces or try to wash it once I had assembled it. Trying to avoid using the word so. Gonna use it anyway. So I got the tissue paper to do that with. The next thing that I need to do is change out the thread on my machine because I think the thread that I have in there right now is either black or navy blue, and I'm afraid that will show through. And while I don't have that the exact shade of blue or gold, I think white thread's probably the best way to go on this. Then, let's see, tissue paper, change thread. Oh, I'm also not going to go in the order that they say in the pattern directions, because in the pattern directions, they have you start with the head of the dragon and ironing using the fusible interfacing to then attach the eyes and then do some other smaller stuff. And so what I'm going to do instead is what I would prefer to do instead, and that is basically assembling the scales and doing some of that work on the body before tackling the head, because I don't know, it just seems to make more sense to me. So we'll go with that. I was wrong about what thread my machine had in it. It does actually have sort of an off-white color thread in it, so that is what I'm going to use. I have my tissue paper here. Yeah, that's the fun part. I took the pin out because the pin was so long that I couldn't get a good start on the seam. So I think what I'm going to do instead of using a pin is to use a clip. So I will go get that clip. Also adjust the lighting a little bit. Is that better? I can't tell. Clip. It would seem that the tissue paper idea was not a grand one, and neither was opening the blinds to try to improve the lighting. So let's go ahead and, It did it again. Look, check this out. Oh, it's kind of hard for you to check it out, but I will try to show you just how annoying this is. Okay, it's kind of hard to hold the phone and lift the lever at the same time, but maybe you can now see what I mean about it eating the fabric. Can you see that? Can you see that? Yeah, it is down there good. Okay, so let's see. I'm going to need to think about this and how to prevent this going forward, because I don't want to have to cut out lots of new scales, nor do I want to have to hand sew everything, but I'm thinking this may turn into a hand sewing project instead of a machine stitching project. I'm going to have to think about that. So you can see what a mess of a nest I have in here of the thread. So, okay. Check out that mess. Can you see it? Right in there, all that thread. Yeah. Okay, why is this not focusing? Okay, maybe that's better. Okay, so you can see there's a mess of threads there. And you can see how on the underside of the stitching plate, when I say it ate the fabric, it pulled it under and it tied knots underneath itself. And I would show you me cutting this apart, but my tripod is getting in the way, and it's hard to hold the phone and use both hands. So I'm going to take this apart and mull. Hand sewing. Pretty sure I'm going to end up hand sewing this. And since that's the case, that concludes this video on the making of the dragon. I will likely take that up as a hand sewing project while I'm watching television at night, or during the day when I just desperately need to keep my hands busy. And yeah, so that is not completely defeated. I am stubborn, I will persevere, but not right now. Okay, so that means that that's the end of this video, and next video I will be working on the corgi dress for Elena. Thanks, bye. So, I have decided that I am going to have to hand sew the dragon, because this fabric is fabulous, it's beautiful, but my machine was eating it, so I decided just gonna break down and hand sew. But I did get these lovely little eyes that came in the mail, and they came, I forget, there's like 5 or 6 different colors. I really like the blue, but of course they wouldn't show up very well on the blue dragon. And Elena, my smartwatch got stuck to the pin there. She chose the orange ones, which I think will look really good on there. It's something that's a third color, so it's going to nicely offset the blue and the yellow. But as I was deciding I'm gonna have to hand sew this, I realized that with hand sewing, there seems to be a larger chance of the stitches actually showing. Not sure why, just seems to work that way for me. So what I am going to do is I'm going to look through my yarn stash, embroidery thread, because I know I don't have any machine thread, regular sewing thread, that is either yellow, and I thought I had some sort of a gray-blue color, but I can't seem to find it. But for the yellow pieces or the gold pieces, before discovering that I could use a sewing machine to sew, I bought an embroidery kit from Amazon and decided I don't like to embroider. I was sticking my fingers way too often, and it just wasn't my jam, as some folks will say. But I did think it was important to keep the thread because I thought, there might be some point in time where I needed some spare thread, so I kept it. Now it's just a matter of deciding which of these yellows is going to work best. Unfortunately, the kit that I chose for the embroidery did not come with any blue thread, but I think I'm gonna go with this one. It looks like it's pretty close. At least it's pretty close to the back side of it, and I think that it probably would work really well with the shiny side too. Since that is the situation, and I don't want to get out and go to the store and try to find blue thread right now, I am going to start by sewing the gold pieces. And I'm also skipping the instructions. The instructions start with building the head and putting it together, but I don't feel like getting out my iron and ironing the little patches for the eyes as the strengthening for the eye bits. So I'm going to start with what I start with. Okay, thanks. Well, after taking forever to separate out the embroidery threads into the little single strands so that I could use them to hand stitch the scales, I realized that even using the sharp needles, it was still very difficult to get the needle through because of the stretchiness of this fabric and the metallic overlay. And you can see my stitches are very, very messy. And although when you turn it inside out, it doesn't look too bad. I mean, you can still see the thread, but because the thread is so close to the color of the fabric, it's really not a big deal. But I'm looking at this and I'm thinking all these little pieces and how long it took me to do this, because not only was it a pain to pull apart the embroidery thread, because of the twisting of it, every time you take a stitch, you risk it getting knotted. See there a couple times. While pulling it through, it managed to create a knot in itself. So, I hate to admit defeat. I do not like to be defeated by such things. But I think that I'm going to have to put this away for a while because it is breaking my brain and draining my energy instead of giving me energy. So I came up with a new name for this episode, and it is Sewing for a Friend. Who slayed who? So I'm not sure. The machine slayed the dragon, and then I tried to vanquish the dragon, and the dragon slayed me. So that's it for this episode. I'm tired of filming on this topic, and things aren't going well. So, end of episode. Bye.